are there any corrections to these minutes? If I can have a motion to, thank you, a second. Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? And the minutes will stand approved. I'd like to mention that the minutes are now being posted as well on the Bell PTA website. You can go to www.chappaqua.pta.org and click on Bell PTA. And there is a button for the minutes, and I hope in a few days we'll have up these new minutes which were just approved. Our next item of business is a treasurer's report. Sherry, if you could come up.
Hi. We had a cash balance on June 30th of $44,085. Since then, we've had income of $29,444. Most of that was class dues we collected. Part of it was merchandise and directory sales, and also money from socials and craft fair booth admissions. And then we had expenses of $21,172. Part of that was gifts to Bell that we voted on at the last PTA meeting. Part of it was a contribution to the Seven Bridges PTA, and then expenses related to the directory, merchandise, socials, and craft fair. If you picked up one of these budget reports on your way in, the first column shows our actual income and expense numbers so far this year. This is a school year, so it starts July 1st. And the middle column is the budget for the whole year. And we're going to be voting on, this is our final budget for the school year. We'll be voting on that tonight. If you have any questions about the budget relating to your committee, or if you need any information from last year about how the money was spent for your committee, just give me a call.
Thank you, Sherry. Prior to a vote to approve the budget this evening, I'm going to read a short document into the record. This document pertains to the budget. It's a letter from me to Mary Ann Benedict, the branch manager of Fleet Bank in Chappaqua. This document is dated October 23rd, 2001. Dear Ms. Benedict, thank you for meeting with me on October 19th, 2001. I will report to membership at our November 7th, 2001 meeting that you will reverse the charges as discussed as set forth in detail in the enclosed attachment by December 31st, 2001. These charges total $801.70. Also, as discussed, no further charges will be incurred during the 3-month period ending December 31st, 2001. As agreed, fees for checks returned for insufficient funds will be paid by us. There was one such charge for $10, and it is not included in the attached schedule. There are no other charges listed for checks returned NSF. The historical files for our account were researched by our treasurer and our past treasurer and show no record of our paying any deposit slip fees, and as such, as per our conversation of October 19th, these fees are included in the schedule of fees to be reversed. Also, as per our conversation, 7 checks marked sent wrong by Fleet are under investigation by Fleet, and determination of cause will be available on November 10th, 2001. Again, I wish to thank you on behalf of the Bell PTA membership for your time and cooperation. These amounts represent the funding of several programs that support our children's school and community. Martha, I'll give you this for the... I want to thank committee members, Bell staff members, who have provided updated information for our budget proposal. I hope all of you have taken a copy of the budget. If there are any questions. Okay. I'd like a motion to approve the budget. Thank you. A second. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The budget will stand approved. At this point in time, I'm going to jump ahead slightly to a relative of mine, Charles Berman. He's going to make an announcement about the Horace Greeley High School production of the Secret Garden.
Thank you. The side of a business is actual business now. I'm going to plug the play. It's The Secret Garden. There's been a book of it and innumerable movies and a Broadway version, very inferior. You might have seen. I'm in it. I play Ben the gardener. I garden the secret garden. There are 4 shows on 3 days. There's one tomorrow at 7:30 in the evening, one on Friday at 8 in the evening, one on Sunday at 2 in the afternoon. At Saturday. There's no show on Sunday, I'm sorry. One on Saturday at 2 in the afternoon and one on Saturday again at 8 in the evening. You can come, you'll enjoy it, and the rest of your family will enjoy it as well. I have tickets here. If all of you buy 10 tickets, it won't use them up, but if it does, I can take promises. I'll be selling tickets while my mother's speaking. I won't be selling tickets while the teachers are coming up and going to be talking about very important things relating to special education. I'll be selling tickets again during the business portion.
Thanks, Charles. I think this is going to be a great play, and besides the fact that my son is in it and many other kids who were Bell students are in it, programs like this affect so many children at the high school, more than just the cast. It's like over 150 kids who are involved in costumes, musicians, artwork, direction, and production. And if we don't support these programs in the high school, these programs won't exist by the time our Bell School students get there. So if they don't sell enough tickets, the show won't be on next year or the year after when our kids in Bell are out there. So it's important for us to get out there and support these as well. So right now, you can come up and buy a ticket for my child. A link. And if you don't tonight, there is a number up there you can call to reserve a ticket. It is 238-5348. Tickets are $10 for adults and $5 for students. And back to PTA business. I had 2 committee reports I was going to just mention here. First was the Bell Theater Company. Our exciting announcement is that we have a play. Our play that we're going to do is Fiddler on the Roof. I really have to commend our, what is it called? Bell Theater Company Planning Subcommittee for doing an excellent job. One of the things we have done that with all of our programs, but we especially worked on here, is that all PTA programs must conform with district principles, supported by the Ethics and Character Tools program of the Chappaqua PTA, and the Bell Theater Company in particular is guided by the character and education themes used at Bell School, community respect and leadership. Bell Theater Company serves as an additional conduit for teaching and reinforcing these important life skills for our students. And I really would like to commend our subcommittee for all their particular work in selecting a play using these criteria, and they did a terrific job. The play is going to be performed in April, but parent and child registration is January 16th, and the parent and the child have to both come to this. And we're not going to have a PTA meeting before then, so I really would like to reinforce that message. It's going to be 7:30 here in the Bell Auditorium. My other committee report, which I'm giving on their behalf, is for the craft fair. It's going to be this Saturday. It's going to be from 10 to 4. It's going to be in this room without the divider. It's going to be in the hallways and in the gymnasium. This is our biggest fundraiser. Please come and support the Bell PTA. You can, after you come purchase your crafts, you can go see a matinee performance of The Secret Garden, or an evening performance afterwards. You can bring your kids. They can spend your money at the craft fair. You can take them up to the show. Have a whole Chappaqua experience. A few short announcements. I want to mention again the Bell PTA website. Please visit it. Aside from the minutes, which I mentioned before, we do have up there also Bell Bulletin. The Chappaqua menu, the one for secondary schools, is the one for us here at Bell School. And very soon we're going to have up the Bell Buzz as well. I did want to make a short announcement with regard to the Bell Buzz, which is a dynamite issue, but here in the section where it mentions the teachers, where we mentioned Terry Koschel, is sometimes one letter can make a big difference, and we were one letter off, and Terry Koschel is a she and not a he, so we offer our apologies to Terry. I've again put over there my Bell PTA email sign-up list. If you have not given me your email address, I'd love to have it. This way I can send you announcements about upcoming events and activities at Bell PTA and some of the other district events that are going on as well. Just want to mention briefly, the Halloween Window Painting Committee had a terrific day to have their painting experience. They did a great job, and as you'll note on here, Dunkin' Donuts donated 1,000 donut holes for our painters, and Village Market donated beverages. And I really want to thank the businesses in town that support this event, and also all the ones that let us use their windows, and hope you thank them when you're in town for us. Now, I've listed a couple websites here. At the bottom, we have the PTA website, which goes to the Chappaqua, the library, and the library has a link where you can get the NCC TV schedule. And the very bottom, the Westchester government website, which has county emergency information. At this point in time, I'm pleased to announce our big presentation of the night, which is a Bell staff presentation on inclusion. We have Pauline Daglio, Team I English teacher, Linda Jameson, skills teacher, Kathleen Kuzma, Team G science teacher, and Sherry Ullman, Team F in math. Miriam Ellen Andrews, the Chappaqua Central School District, Director of Special Education and Related Services, which will not fit on her business card, I'm sure, is here to make an introduction for our presentation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank the members of the Bell PTA for inviting us here tonight. This is a very important initiative. It's an initiative that the Chappaqua School District stepped up to several years ago. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background about the federal mandates and what inclusive education means. And then the people who practice it day in and day out and do such a wonderful job with our children are going to tell you what they do and how they do it. And they have a wonderful PowerPoint presentation that gives specific examples of what's going on in their classrooms every day. So my colleagues are members of the 7th and 8th grade teams here, as Kathy mentioned. In 1972, Public Law 94-142 became part of the federal government's legislation. That was a law that guaranteed that students with disabilities received public education. The name of that law changed to the acronym IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, in 1975. It was reauthorized in 1997, and at that time there was a push for inclusive education. In fact, in that law, the law states very clearly that students with disabilities must be educated within the general education setting, and if not, why not? And show us why on these students' individual education plans or their IEPs, why their education can't be within the general education realm. And so that's really what inclusive education is. It's students with disabilities receiving their special education, most or all of it within the general education realm. And that's what we do here in Chappaqua. And as a result of that law being reauthorized in 1997, this district really stepped up to the plate and took care of business. And all of our students who are receiving their special education within this district receive it in inclusive settings, kindergarten through 12th grade. The law is about to be reauthorized. President Bush, early in October, appointed a commission, the President's Commission on Excellence in Special Education. That commission consists of somewhere between 19 and 34 members, and they are beginning to study federal, state, and local special education programs. They will be making a report to President Bush by April 30th, and especially in terms of how special education should be funded. There is, connected with IDEA, the federal legislation, there is money. This district receives some federal money. All districts do, and it's based on how many students within the district receive special education. When IDEA was originally authorized back in 1972, the hope was that the federal government would fund special education at 40% of the cost. Currently, it's funded somewhere between 5 and 11%, depending on the district. So this initiative of President Bush's, one of the focuses of it will be how can the federal government fund IDEA at where it's supposed to be, where it was originally determined to be funded at 40%. So that's a brief introduction to inclusion, but I'm going to let my colleagues who go at it every day with the kids and do such a wonderful job explain it to you. They told me that they're nervous, so, but a little bit of nervousness is good. It keeps you on your toes. I think, who's beginning? Pauline? Okay, Pauline's directing the show, and Linda? And Kathleen? Kathleen is a science teacher. Kathleen Kuzma, and Linda Jameson is a special education teacher. Pauline Daglio teaches English, and Sherry Oman is a math teacher.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much again. I'm Linda Jameson, and this is my cohort over here, as I like to call her. This is Kathleen. I'll be referring to her as Kathleen through the majority of this because that's how I talk to her every day. So it's hard for me to break that habit. I can't call her Mrs. Kuzma yet, even though she was married a little while ago. I still can't get used to that. The first thing we decided we were going to start off with for you tonight was to give you a brief overview of the definitions of some of the words that you hear us talk about all the time when you hear us speak about this program. The first word that we're going to look at is inclusion. The definition of inclusion is that it's a model wherein no matter what the academic challenges are, students are placed in mainstream classes. That's our definition of what inclusion is here in this district. The second word that you usually hear us use is collaboration. This is a model of teaching in which teachers work together as a team for the planning of curriculum, instruction, and assessment in order to meet the needs of all the students. The third one is co-teaching, a model where teachers deliver instruction as equal partners. This can occur in a variety of ways. We wanted you to be able to see the differences between them because a lot of times the words are thrown around and people don't understand the differences between them, but there are definite differences between all three of them, and that's what we put them up there for tonight. Kathleen and I co-taught for two years, and we became quite a team. So you're up.
We're going to be simulating a model of co-teaching similar to what we did in the classroom. And we're going to start with a belief. And our belief is that successful co-teaching begins with the belief that both teachers share the responsibilities of teaching the lessons and evaluating the student work throughout the unit. And that is a belief that we both stick to. And we do share everything when we co-teach. The first step of successful co-teaching is in planning. And we had to coordinate planning time, and we knew we'd be co-teaching during the 2000 to 2001 school year, so we began to plan over the summer. In July and August of 2000, we met, and we began to sit down and plan the unit that we would be co-teaching. When the school year started, we requested 4 half days to also sit down and kind of finalize planning our unit. And we also would meet once a week or once every 4 days of the cycle in order to also kind of finalize our planning and just touch base so that we both knew what was going to be happening. And we believe that planning is very important to make co-teaching successful. You really do need collaborative planning time in order to make this work. Once we had our planning time, we needed to choose the units.
We began the unit basically because of the name. We decided on the unit, The Nature of Life, because it was a topic that I was most familiar with, and I felt comfortable with what I knew about the unit, and I could help Kathleen in teaching it, in the most effective way. The Nature of Life unit also lends itself to a variety of learning activities to meet the needs of all the students. So it seemed like an excellent place for us to begin.
Okay, so we decided on our Nature of Life unit, and we were all set to go with the planning. And we sat down and we decided on our unit concept. What did we want all the students to learn? And the concept that we came up with was that cells are the building blocks of all living things. And that's what we wanted all students to learn and focus on during this unit. Once we had our concept, we came up with some essential questions that we also wanted to focus on throughout this unit. And the essential questions that we came up with were, how are cells important to living things? And what makes a living thing living? What are the characteristics? What are the qualifications to make something living? And that's what we really focused on. And once we had those, the questions and the concept, we were now able to start planning our learning activities. And those learning activities really centered around that unit concept and the essential questions. And they were all targeted towards those.
The other thing that we had to address as we were addressing the unit was how we were going to approach the different ways that we could possibly teach this. Co-teaching is not just, standing up and Kathleen would do something. There's different models of doing the co-teaching, and so we had to decide which ones we were going to utilize in the classroom. These are just examples of some of the ways that co-teaching can be accomplished. The first one is parallel teaching. This is where the class is taught in two groups to reduce the student-teacher ratio. And it benefits the students in that it enhances discussion, review of the materials, and student participation. A second example is station teaching. Content here is divided among the teachers, and the students rotate through many lessons in the classroom. This improves the student comprehension and the application of the concepts that are being covered. The third one is team teaching, and this is where the class is taught simultaneously by the teachers. And that means that both teachers are up in front, and we are kind of doing it for you now. We go back and forth, and it really promotes the student engagement because we both are in the classroom and walking around students and offering the information that's being covered. There we go. Okay. Once we had decided on that, and we had decided on the topics and things like that, we introduced the unit. It was actually a very fun activity that we did with the kids. We introduced it to them with a discrepant event demonstration that was designed to activate the students' prior knowledge. And what happened was Kathleen had done something in college with one of her teachers, and we used the same demonstration to get the kids started and to activate any knowledge they had previously on things that had to do with characteristics of living things. The students then used that activity that we did in class as a springboard to generate ideas about characteristics for living things, which we then turned into a graphic organizer for them. So in what they actually did was they actually came up with all the ideas themselves. We just kind of stood there and helped them along. But it actually promoted their learning because they came up with all these ideas and we gave them the graphic for it.
Activity that we did was called the reading roadmap. And Linda was actually the one who came up with this because she was taking a reading class at the time. And we wanted to build some study skills into this unit. And the reading roadmap is designed to help students navigate the reading of the textbook. And it incorporates a strategy to help improve reading skills. And we were looking for skills such as reading for understanding, not just finding the answer, actually reading and reading for understanding. And the reason for this is that students need to become aware of how they think as they read through the material. And if you look up here, and it's a little hard to see, but what we did was we broke it down for the students. And the boxes on the left are actually their direction boxes, and it will tell them some questions, a question from the answer. And the first question, there was what do hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon have to do with living things, and there's a space for them to fill in the answer. And it's really a good strategy to get them to, to read certain parts of material, pick out the important facts, and read for understanding. And it was a really great activity that we did, and it really helps to prepare them for as they get older and are told to read something, they're learning some skills to help them understand it.
The next thing that we did was, now that they had been introduced to the concepts from the reading, we reinforced the concepts through what we call filling notes. And this was done as a whole class activity, and since they already had some of the background knowledge, all the students were able to participate. And Kathleen or I would read, and the students would fill in the blanks, and that's how they completed these notes. And these notes were then used to help them study for the test, and they were reinforcing the original concept that they got from the reading.
The next thing that we did was called the Cell Project, and it's a whole class project because there are 4 classes. Each class creates a giant egg-sized cell. We have plant cells and animal cells, so we have 2 classes created plant cells and 2 classes created animal cells. And the students worked in teams, and they were assigned various cell organelles, and they worked in teams of 2 or 3. And there were 3 components. They needed to research some information about the cell organelle. They needed to prepare a Lotus freelance presentation to share with the rest of the class. And they needed to construct a 3-dimensional model of the organelle and label it. And then they had a couple of weeks in class to work on this. When they were finished, we set aside a couple of days for presentations, and the students would present to the class and teach their classmates all about the organelle, and then we hung their organelle into their class cell. And we were done. The classroom was basically a big cell museum, and it was a really great visual, and it was a great way to help students learn about the cell. And again, the 3 ways that they were learning about this were the researching and the writing of the research report, the actual construction of the model, and then the teaching it to their classmates. So this was a really great activity to get them involved and really learn about cells and what a cell is.
About this time, we figured that we should give them a quiz to see how well they were retaining the information. And so instead of just giving them a quiz or telling them that they were having a quiz, we actually decided that we were going to teach the students how to make their own study guide. So a lot of times students are given a study guide, and I don't know if you know your own kids, but they put the study guide in their notebook and they usually don't look at it again, or they're not sure what to do with it. So we thought that at this point we would teach them how to make their own study guide and thus use their own study guide, and to help them, I guess, develop better study habits at home. So the first thing we did is, as I look through my notes, is basically, the study guide said we told them what we wanted them to do it for, that it was to assist them in learning how to develop study techniques for themselves. We will be leading you through the process of creating your own study guide. Please follow all the directions carefully and keep these sheets for future reference. So what we did was, it wasn't a one-time deal. We actually had them redo this again as another activity later on in the year, so that they would continue working on this particular strategy. The directions were for them to read through the list of topics to be covered. So we gave them the sheet that had the list of topics, and it was plant and animal cells and organelles and functions. That was everything that was going to be on the quiz. The next thing we had them do was gather all their notes together, and we told them what notes they were going to need for the test. And that was their T-chart, their jigsaw, their research, presentation notes, and the color code of the plant and animal cell. And from there, we had them develop questions. I don't know if you have questions. Do you have questions? We had them develop questions. We gave them examples of the kinds of questions they could create, and they went home, and part of their homework assignment was to make their study guide and come back in with the questions.
And then the final part of this unit, the final assessment, was called Mission to the Center of the Cell, and we gave them an authentic assessment to kind of bring some closure to this unit. And the assessment project was differentiated based on student interest and learning style. In other words, the student had a choice of how they wanted to present their learning to us. And the background information, the students were given some information that they were part of a research team that was shrunk to microscopic size. And the research team was asked to go into a cell and explore, and their mission was to find a faulty piece of DNA in the nucleus of the cell and bring that DNA back to the lab for further analysis. And along the way, they had to describe their adventures. They needed to mention all of the cell organelles and what the organelles were doing, and any other mishaps or adventures that happened along the way. And they had several choices, and we
that we gave them were, they could create a fictional story about their journey, complete with pictures. They could create a board game that depicted the dangers and triumphs of their adventure. They could do a video representation of the adventure, and this was actually an interesting, we had a lot of students that wanted to do this, and it turned out to be a very interesting learning experience for Kathleen and I, because we learned about some things that we needed to do as teachers in order to have the students do this to the best of their ability. We also offered them the opportunity to do a news article or a taped report explaining the details of the mission, or to create a comic strip about their experience.
And again, the students got to choose. They had their list of choices, and they were given a few days to think about it, and they were given a choice. And we had them write down their choice and explain why they made that choice to us. And once they had made that choice, they were provided with some information and some criteria on which to follow when they were creating their project. And we have a couple of examples. We have just a couple board game examples from last year. One is a Spell Monopoly game, and this did, I do have the cards that go with it up in my room somewhere, but this had very detailed cards that went along with it. This was a really great one. And then that was another example of a board game. Again, there were question cards and trivia cards that went along with that to kind of detail the adventures through the cell. So we also had various videotapes and news articles and some comic strips, all sorts of great projects. And the students really did a great job of showing their knowledge about cells through these creative projects. And we really feel that this was a great unit, and that the students were very successful. We enjoy teaching it, and the students seem to enjoy learning it, and we're going to continue to share this unit with the students.
I think we're going to continue with the presentation and take more questions from the end. Good evening again. My name is Pauline Dackley, and I teach on Team I English. And because I teach, I'm not good with microphones. Don't mind, I'm going to not be in front of Also, I just wanted to start by saying it's so refreshing to have so many people sitting up so straight and looking at me when I'm speaking. I'm just going to stand up here and enjoy that. Sort of launching off from the conversation that you already heard, I'm going to speak to you tonight about differentiation of instruction. While I also co-teach and collaborate in my classes, the thinking behind my instruction is that notion of differentiation. When I think about what differentiation is, what I really need to think about is where do I want my students to get to by the end of the unit or by the end of the lesson. And what differentiation is not, it is not changing the outcome of the lesson or changing the objective for your class of students because we have varying levels. It's finding a way to bring all of the students to the outcome. So I'm going to walk you through a persuasive writing unit and talk to you a little bit about how I do that for a group of students where some kids come in very able and willing to write a persuasive essay with a logical beginning, middle, and end. And other kids who can write something that's persuasive but doesn't fit the format and lacks focus and voice. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that. When you begin any unit in a differentiated classroom, you really have to start by figuring out where your students are. I always tell the kids that I'm not on a mission here to teach what I feel like teaching, what makes me happy today. It's not like you look at comments today because Dad feels like doing that. If that's what we're focusing on, it's because I saw a need in your own work, and we need to start where you are. So I like to try to tell the students that I meet them where they are, and that may be as a whole group or in an individual way. Step one is called pre-assessment, so that in every unit or before every type of skill or activity, there will be some type of pre-assessment task. Within that, students are asked to actually produce whatever the outcome of the unit or the lesson might be. So in this case, it would be a persuasive essay. That way I can see what's already done, what learning has already occurred in the previous years, 6th and 7th grade and so forth, and make judgments as to how I can structure my lesson. That also means that while a lot of people might believe that I'm just pulling out from last year and looking in the binder of lessons and, oh, I taught this will be great for today because I did this on this Tuesday last year, it doesn't quite work that way because I have a different group of students, different set of needs, and I really need to focus on those. The pre-assessment task for this persuasive writing unit was indeed to write a persuasive letter, and from that I asked them to include a beginning, a middle, and an end without any more instruction. Also explain to the students that I can use this to show you why when I group you later on, you're in a particular group. Look what you did here, let's talk about how you can improve this. So it really helps me to get them to buy into my thinking and my grouping technique. Step 2 for this unit was still a whole class lesson. I have to start with the difference between fact and opinion and how we substantiate our claims with evidence. And when I did that in a variety of ways in a whole class setting. Even though within a whole class setting you can differentiate your instruction by the way you question your students. So when I began, I actually had everybody stand up, and we went around the room, and I had a lot of fun because I would walk up to a student and I would say, okay, middle school, give me a fact. And of course, the fact is boring, too much work. Or then someone might say, wait a minute, but I don't know if that's a fact. It's boring. And we would have a conversation about it. So I'd go around to a few students and I might say, Ms. Daglio, be nice, fact or opinion. And we would negotiate what is a fact or opinion. And I might start with students who I really think could answer me that question of fact versus an opinion. And then as we establish a definition, those students who are a little more reluctant to share but still should be encouraged are then asked to, now that we know an opinion can begin with I think, an opinion is something that you believe, can someone give us another example of an opinion? This is a less risky situation than the first one, so that those students will feel comfortable stepping up and then saying, okay, now I get it. Now I can tell you what an opinion is. So already in the way that I approach the students, I give those who want to take the risk and have the ability to do so, and the comfort level, the ability to step forward, and those who need more time to learn and internalize, they have that time as well. Questioning levels can go on from the very concrete level to defining or repeat what I'm saying to an evaluative and synthesizing level. And I really do take them that far in a whole group setting. Following that, I use a variety of group tasks. And I have said before that what you don't differentiate is the outcome or the learning objective, but you do differentiate in a number of ways depending on where you want the kids to be and where you want the kids to get to. You can differentiate for content. So if it's what is persuasion and what are the elements of persuasion, I might group kids who seem to have an understanding of that in one situation and other kids who are kind of hazy and aren't quite clear on what that all means separately. Sometimes you group according to process. So it may be that I want to teach kids about how to begin with a brainstorming. Those kids who just couldn't organize the piece really don't brainstorm by nature. So I want to go back and give them this graphic organizer and talk to them about generating ideas. The product itself is something that actually these two talk to you about how you can differentiate in the end. A persuasive essay can look like a variety of things, and it can also be 1 page long versus a lot longer piece. And that really depends on how much you want the kids to get into it. And then even classroom environment, that can be changed as well. But with my grouping techniques, this is the first one, I start with a conversation about leads and conclusions. So that when I look at the initial pre-assessment task, I can tell which students really understand how you write attention-getting lead, how you introduce what's coming next, and then how you wrap that up in a conclusion that ties back but doesn't exactly repeat the introduction. And when I looked at those, I decided that there were certain kids that were successful in this area and others that were not. So based on those particular needs, I would regroup them in the class and be with my collaborator co-teacher, or even in the classes where I am by myself, I am able to meet with those individual groups. And while I'm doing that, kids are working on a reinforcement task on fact and opinion. So it may be that they walk in and everyone who has a red card meets with Ms. Daglio for the first 15 minutes while everyone with a blue card is working on this handout, and then we switch. But it certainly can work both with the co-teacher collaborator in the room and when you're in a class independently. I also teach kids a lot about transitions in writing, and this is something that can be done in a variety of ways. We can work in the very beginning stages of that, and I give kids a whole list of transition words and ask them to apply them, and I can work through them with that to say, well, gee, you kind of started all your sentences the same way. Could you take one of these words and put it in here? How would it make the writing flow? Whereas when working with another group who sort of does this naturally, then I talk to them about sort of the stylistic approach to transitions. Are you overdoing it here? This is kind of a cliche transition. You say in conclusion all the time. How could we make this have a stronger voice? So it's the same outcome. It's the same objective. It's the same thing that I want the kids to learn. It's just the extent to where I'm going to bring them based on where they're coming from individually. The last piece is writing with conviction, and that's really where I can take those kids who master the writing and really push them a step farther. I even had a child today who's writing a persuasive piece about anthrax. And she is a student who historically has gotten A's on every single thing she's written, and she's made that very clear to me. And when she turns this in for me to sort of pre-approve it, since it's due in a week, she wants to just get some feedback as if her information is accurate, as if I'm that well informed about anthrax. But I did, and I wrote back some comments about her style and her voice and how she's taking command of the piece and what she's communicating. And I gave it back to her, and I always write in pencil because I don't want to overpower the piece. And she looks at it, and she looks at me, and she says, "Should change this." But I think when I saw that, you mean I still have work? I'm not done? I'm almost done? That message really was powerful for me this morning because it reminded me how much there are varying levels of abilities, and just because a student successfully meets the requirements doesn't mean that we can give that student and that we should give the student. So I think it's really important to enrich the instruction within the confines of what the lesson is, and that's one way to do it. And then I usually tie a unit by bringing the students back together again with some kind of closure piece. In this case, it's an author circle activity, which the students love. It's most successful. Actually line the desks up around the circle, the perimeter of the room, and they're in a circle, and they face out. Because I find when they face each other, there's more temptation to converse, but they face out. And they start at their own desk, and they start with their final piece and a blank sheet of paper. On the top, they put their name on that piece of paper. And then what the goal is to circulate around the room to see a variety of persuasive pieces and to compliment the writer. And what happens is at the end, each writer walks away with a sheet of paper with about 15 or 20 compliments on this. Having done this last year, there were administrators who popped in, who jumped in the circle and complimented anyone who was in the hallway. I was dragging people in so that they could see that the audience is wider than just our peers. And what that did was it allowed students to repeat some of what they had learned in the mini lessons and in the small groups. I saw things that kids were not talking about in the beginning of the unit. Things like, I really like the transitions you use, or your piece speaks to me, it really has a commanding voice. I mean, words and language that I couldn't imagine that they would use, but they really did internalize the instruction. And I think because I was able to target their individual needs and work with them in small groups, that they felt that they were getting what they individually needed, and rather than that sort of, I'll shut down in the middle of the class because I already get this, she's just doing a review. It was really, in all, I think that the message in differentiation is that when you think about teaching students in the classroom, it doesn't matter how you group kids. I mean, while we have an inclusion model here, even if you are in a situation where you don't, you're never going to have a set group of kids that all come in at the same level. I mean, no matter what you look at a group of students, you will see that there are levels where students, depending on the unit or the assignment, are in the readiness stage, where they're just ready to get the information and learn, or they're in the enrichment stage, and they've got the basics down, and we need to pull them a step farther. And it changes. I mean, I think the critical issue here is that the inclusive classroom allows the groups to change. They're so fluid. If it's a writing task, we might have certain students that are in the enrichment group, and while they don't know that I call it that, this is how I sort of conceive it, they may be in a different group the next time. Maybe it's a reading task, and this is where their needs are. So that they're always meeting with different students, and no one can really tell whose ability is what, because it really depends on the task. It's not that I can label you as, you are this kind of writer all of the time, or you're this kind of reader all the time. And that's really my underlying message. Okay. Can you see it? Giving it a the two sentences in white are kind of my mission in the classroom, and what I try to convey to students and what I really believe myself as a teacher is that no matter what you believe your individual challenge is to be, you can find ways to compensate for that. You can write, even though it may say somewhere or you have heard before that you're not so great with spelling. It doesn't mean that you cannot write and that you cannot learn to be a better speller. If reading is your challenge, you still can learn to read. Those are not excuses to say, well, okay, then I just need support and accommodations here. Well, certainly we need to get you to a level where you can improve where you are. But when you look at a continuum, if you can say that this student starts here, and by the end of the year, if the student ends here, that's just as good as the student who starts here and moves farther along the path. My goal is to really individualize instruction and to find a way to meet the students where they are so that I can be assured that everyone is making progress in the classroom regardless of ability level.
Yeah, I'm just here to talk about the benefits of having a collaborator in the classroom, to me as a teacher and to the students themselves. The first most important thing is I don't even like to call my collaborator a special ed teacher because they are co-teaching with me. They're teaching all the students, so I'd rather call them something along the lines of a learning specialist or like say a strategist because they teach all the students so many strategies on how to learn or how to have test-taking skills and things like that. They're not a special ed teacher. They help me with my teaching. Whenever we plan, it's two heads are better than one. We bounce ideas off each other. And any last-minute decisions we need to make within the confines of the classroom, and those happen all the time. It's always great to have somebody just to agree with you or just to think, have you think another view. The second reason why I'm saying to have a co-teacher in the classroom is that I'm able to reach many different students with a variety of learning styles. As Kathleen and Linda showed that you could differentiate according to style as far as audio, visual, kinesthetic, tactile. Some people like to touch, some people understand more when they see it. And having a teacher in there with me that makes me aware of all those things going on and helps me with my planning really helps me be able to have my teaching understood. We also do global versus analytical learning, and we do an activity in which the students learn themselves what kind of learner they are. And it's good to have that metacognition at a young age to know how they learn best. And we let them learn in a way they know best first, and then we try to push them a little bit to learn in a way that they find a little difficult. I just feel like some of this is repetition, but as Pauline said, we reach students on all different levels. We come with an overarching question. This is what I want all my students to know. And then we embed practice for the kids who haven't seen it yet and challenges for the kids that have already seen it and need to be pushed a little bit more. And the most important thing I think about our co-teaching is the fact that we have this common planning time together, and we meet with each other about once a cycle to discuss our units prior to instruction. That way we foresee any problems we may be having with the unit, and we can work proactively so we don't have those problems. And I think another great part of it is that we get to reflect on how the teaching went. So for next year, I could say, well, that didn't work out quite well, and talk it over with my collaborator and see how it would work better. There's a lot of benefits for the students themselves. It's great to have a second voice in the classroom. Learning something in two different ways is much better learning it in one way. Sometimes when I'm with my collaborator, I may say something in front of the room, and then from the side of the room, you may hear it in a totally different way, or the collaborator may ask a question that makes the kids think a little bit further, a higher level question, and we bounce back and forth, and their heads go bouncing a little. Sometimes we're both in the front of the room, sometimes we both walk around, but it really encourages critical thinking when they're being challenged all the time. It's obvious that we could have more individualized attention. We throw another teacher in the room, it cuts the ratio in half. And that's great when you're trying to conference with the students or do informal assessments. It can be done a lot quicker and a lot more in depth having another teacher in the room. The students receive immediate clarification of concepts. Sometimes being a teacher and you're in teacher mode and you're just like, I'm getting my material across, I'm proficient at. I may not be the most proficient at teaching all the different learning styles. And there's another teacher in the room saying, my co-teacher in the room raises her hand and she's like, I didn't quite get that. Could somebody say that in a different way? And it bounces to another child, and the child could say it in their way, or the collaborating teacher could say it in her way. And that way the student in the back of the room who's kind of scratching his head before hears it again. And then if one of us sees that there's still kids that don't understand, we can take them aside. It's great to have the extra pair of eyes. My favorite thing about having a co-teacher is that it improves organization for me and for the students. Things like having tests coming up. We organize it into, okay, today is Monday, you know the test next Monday, you should study your notes from these dates. The next day, study the next set of notes. Work on your review sheet, questions 1 through 10 one day. Having that organization really gets rid of the procrastinator who always would do that review sheet the day before and might have questions that they need to ask and they just don't get it done. And most importantly, having a co-teacher in the room lets us create a diverse community of learners. Not all the students would be in that room if we didn't have that collaboration. And when we teach differentiated learning and we divide up the learners by learning style instead of ability or by interest, they're working with kids they might not normally work with. And they all have an equal voice within that group and they value each other as learners and as teachers. And I think that's, the bottom line is that we have all these great students and they're learning to value one another within the classroom. I came up with one success story of how a student that's not designated tremendously benefited from having a collaborator within the classroom. And it was a student I had last year who was a very high standardized test taker. And when she entered the 7th grade, things moved from concrete to abstract. And all of a sudden, she just wasn't getting it anymore. And her disorganization became an issue, and she was not performing well. And the collaborative teacher would come in and say, okay, we're doing our do now. If I give a handout, we would just make sure the handout goes into the correct section. And an extra pair of eyes, an extra pair of hands. We worked with her on organization, and she got the strategies on her own. And when we were switching sections the next trimester, because we switched sections in 7th grade, she asked to be in a collaborative setting because she felt so comfortable asking the questions and working with the collaborator that she wanted to do it again. What I think is the best part of the story is that she was able to use those strategies and keep them with her, and she made it into course 1, which is a higher level math here, and she's doing great because she took away those strategies and now she's applying it to another situation. And that's really the end of our presentation. I'm going to bring back up my colleagues in case you have any questions that we can.
I want to create a little time frame for us here. If we could have maybe about 5 minutes of questions. Pauline, I think, was going to share CD one of her students did with us. We also want to have time for Kathy Pearson after that to give us her Board of Ed report, and then Ken Mitchell has a principal's report afterwards. So we can start with about 5 minutes of questions.
For 30 seconds.
I want to be clear on what the difference between co-co class and a collaborative class. With the collaborative class, is there a special ed teacher in that class, or is it just a teacher's assistant who is not a special ed teacher, but just another set of eyes? And if it is a special ed teacher, then what really makes it that different than a co-co class?
Good question. The difference actually is the collaborator, there can at times be a co-teacher in the class, but not always. It doesn't always evolve into that way. The key of the whole thing about the collaboration is that the special ed teacher does meet with the teacher at least once a cycle, so all the information that's being passed on to the students is discussed between the two. So the teacher is aware of the unit being discussed, the special ed teacher or the learning strategist is aware of all the information that's going to be passed on to the classroom, and the ideas and the unit and the material is discussed fully between the two. So even though the learning strategist might not be present in the classroom at that time, they are present in the planning of the unit, in the planning of the assessment, in even the formation of the concept that's going to be covered. So the person is present there. They might just not be physically present in the room.
So in a collaborative class, you can feasibly not have any other teacher in the class except for the main teacher.
Yes.
I'm so impressed by the creative ideas that you would implement into the classes and the amount of time and effort that it takes to differentiate teaching. You're all 8th grade teachers. 8th grade? Okay. Well, those of you who aren't 8th grade teachers, I'm interested in you putting yourself in the position of an 8th grade teacher who is preparing kids in some sort of way for assessment tests at the end of the year. And do you feel that that what you do and the creativity that you bring to the curriculum is compromised in any way by what the kids face in the way of the state assessments?
Well, I can certainly speak for English. It'd be a little hard for me to speak for some of the other subject areas. But my feeling about the English assessment is that it's very much a skills assessment test, and it's about not specific content, but about how to apply reading and writing skills. And they are good skills, and they're important and critical skills that all students need to know. So the way that I address it is by just including the format that kids are familiar with it, with the activities that I already do. I don't really feel that it stifles the creativity in the sense that I don't take away the creative aspects of the lessons, but I do make sure that kids are familiar with what it would look like to see a performance-based task where you have two pieces of text you have to compare and contrast, fill in a graphic organizer, and this is the format of the assessment. Answer some short answer questions, and then develop a longer piece. But that sort of does mirror what I already do in English class in terms of developing a piece from its beginnings to its ultimate end. So for English, it actually jives well, and while I will say I've had to borrow the format and change some activities so it looks like it, the kids are familiar, it's not been such a critical change.
I could speak for math in 7th grade. Along the same lines, I'm more teaching for understanding. When I'm teaching it in a creative way, they're understanding it because they're hands-on, they're doing it, and they're going to come away a year from now and still know I have an integers activity where they go station to station, and one they do it visually, and the next station they're listening to something, one they're actually walking along a number line. And I think they understand it, whereas if I was teaching it in front of the room, they might remember it for the test, and then it fades away and says, "I lost math when it's gone." So I think teaching it creatively makes it accessible to more learners, and it gives them a bank of information that they can remember when they're asked to perform a simple calculation on the test.
As far as science goes, last year was the first year that the students actually took the 8th grade science assessment. And in my classroom, again, I teach for understanding, so we do use some creative teaching strategies, but again, it's teaching for understanding, so the students have a good knowledge of the content that we do teach them. And as far as the creativity affecting them, we haven't really noticed it. The students last year performed pretty well in the state science assessment. We have looked over those assessments, and we have reworked some of our lab activities as far as the performance-based skills part of the science assessment. But really, we're teaching for understanding, and teaching in these creative ways does help the students remember. We think back to the projects that they did, and their ownership of the cell organelle of their atoms, and it really does help them in the overall understanding.
Okay, I think our 5 minutes is up. Move you on. Colin, if you'd like to this is sort of a sidestep here. This that I'm going to share with you tonight is it was a writing assignment. I use a philosophy that was sort of originally coined by Nancy Atwell and a number of other researchers in the field of English and reading called writing workshop. And the thinking behind that is that students are constantly writing. There's an evolving process of writing, and that we write for a variety of purposes, and that we also write because writing is a way of making meaning in our lives. And because of that, students in my classes are writing all year long from September to June, constantly turning in pieces, some of which sound a little unusual for a school assignment, such as a menu or a roadmap or a brochure, but we talk about what are the styles of writing and how you can perfect those pieces. The assignments are completely open-ended, other than to say that students need to choose, and they fluctuate between writing to inform, so that there's specific formats and guidelines on those pieces, versus writing to entertain. And in the first round of writing workshop, a student of mine chose a piece of entertainment and chose song lyrics. And first said very loudly, "Oh, song lyrics, this will be easy." And got all excited and went home and wrote a verse and came in and said he was done. And of course he wasn't. So when we talked about that, we looked at the piece and we were able to develop it further. But then he spent a lot of time on it, and he used this as a vehicle to talk about his feelings and his reactions to the September 11th tragedies. In doing so, he developed a song that uses Bob Dylan lyrics, which he changed. He just kept the chorus and uses the music behind it. Josh himself recorded it and shared it with the class. And I have to tell you that I first heard this in my car on the way home because I've never had a student turn in a CD before. And I thought it very interesting that you had the writing packet and the CD sort of stuck inside, and it sort of spilled out when I was putting them into my bag. So I popped it in, and I was so moved. I think, half my family and my husband have heard the CD now, and I really wanted to share it with a wider audience. Josh is aware that I'm sharing this, and he is certainly pleased about it, although he's a little shy, which is quite funny. But
so cool. Made my way to the mirror, fixed my hair, then I went to school. I saw my friend early, he hung out as time would allow. I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. Silver planes fly through the air, high above the world. Clear blue skies all too well that day, when they spun around and whirled. Unexpected, unprepared, crashed into our tower somehow. But I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. Kids were fighting, hearing the news, crying and running around, worried for their families and praying they would be found. We all went home and saw the scene and couldn't imagine how. But I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. Towers they were flaming, people jumping and terrified. All the world was aching for the thousands who had died. We watched unbelieving as those towers fell somehow. But I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. So many children's lives were cut as they learned that their parents were dead. An act of war against our country, it was a day of dread. It was a day we will never forget. It will live in our memories somehow. But I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. Healthy feelings run through my veins. How could I care that cool? Now as I look in the mirror, I am no longer a fool. What matters is caring for each other, being committed to that I vow. But I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now.
But you can just see that it really gave him an outlet. And when we played it for the class, it was a very emotional moment where a lot of kids just kind of, there was a silence and a turn, and everyone sort of just looked at him and said, wow. I mean, just wow. You said a lot of what we didn't get to say. So I thought it was important to share.
his last name, we should really give him credit.
Josh Cherry.
I want to thank all of you. I have to tell you, all the people behind me are whispering, oh, we hope our kids get you. You just really feel like it's just wonderful the way you've made inclusion such a experiential thing for all the students, and really something that offers something to everyone. Kathy, I'd like to have you come up and give the Board of Ed report, please.
My hard act to follow. Since our last PTA meeting, the board's met twice. At the October 9th meeting, Dr. Donovan recommended Mr. William Hoppek to be appointed principal of West Orchard, effective December 1st, 2001, and the board unanimously approved this appointment. At that meeting, a presentation was made on the 2001-2002 Register of Disabilities. It was reported that there are 308 students within the district between ages 5 and 21 that have been identified by CPSE, CSE, and Section 504. This figure represents almost 9% of the total student population. State average is somewhere between 12 and 16%. At this meeting, Dr. Donovan gave an enrollment report showing the rise of enrollment at each of the schools from the 70s through the projected enrollment of 2007. And right now, our total school district's enrollment is 3,962, and the projected figure for 2007 is 4,295. Bell currently has 973 students, and next year the projection is 1,031, with projection for 1,065 for the following year. Across the board, the projections continue to show enrollment rising and then reaching a plateau, but not really no decline. Figures are close to the demographer's projections, with slightly lower figures at the elementary level. Janet Benton, board president, reported on the Board of Education goals for 2001 and 2002 at the October 9th meeting. The first goal is construction. The board will oversee and monitor the progress of construction projects approved in the bond to ensure quality of finished work, appropriate allocation of the budget, and the earliest possible date for completion of the project. Another goal is elementary redistricting. The board will direct the development of an overall elementary redistricting plan to balance the school population and optimize facility utilization. In addition, middle school attendance zones and transition plans are goals. The board will determine attendance zones for the 2, 5 through 8 middle schools, and as part of this, they'll review bus transportation guidelines and the start-end time of all schools in the district. Responsible citizenship is another goal. The board will review the district-wide programs related to our mission statement and standard of excellence of responsible citizenship. They will expand programs addressing issues of respect and social decision-making, as well as review policies and practices regarding responsible student behavior. The board has also included kindergarten as a goal. They'll identify options for an extended kindergarten program to be considered for implementation when elementary school space is available. And the final goal for the 2001-2002 year is class size. The board will establish criteria for determining appropriate elementary class size. The next meeting was on October 23rd. At that meeting, the Chappaqua PTA made contributions to the Horace Greeley Education Fund and the Chappaqua School Foundation in recognition of the work of the Board of Education members. At this meeting, the board approved the Bell PTA gifts. There was a $1,000 gift for a jazz in residence program for 7th and 8th graders band, $1,900 for a digital camera, scanner, and printer for Home and Careers in the Leadership Club, and $1,275 was given for a Bell Middle School sign that's going to be placed in front of our school. Dr. Donovan spoke on elementary redistricting for the K through 4 configuration. He reviewed the committee's approach, issues discussed, and objectives for balancing the enrollments at the 3 elementary schools. And the committee made the following recommendations. Approximately 40 to 45 children would move from Grassland to Roaring Brook, and 75 students would move from Roaring Brook to West Orchard. He recommended waiting until 2003 for redistricting the elementary schools, so Bell will have the option of next year utilizing available space in the elementary schools to alleviate overcrowding. And the board will not make a decision on elementary zone until they hear the middle school zone recommendations. Decisions will be made by late fall or early winter of this year. The board was moving on. The board was requested to sponsor a modified hockey program at Bell, and after considering such issues as transportation, liability, and funding, the board decided not to support this program. Dr. Donovan reported on an update of the Responsible Citizens Task Force at the high school, and he highlighted how everyone is working together towards improving citizenship within our schools and community. As part of the SAVE legislation, crisis response plans include lockdown drills 2 times per year. I think Bell's was today, and I think Ken is going to talk about that in his report. In terms of construction, Dr. Donovan reported final architectural and engineering approvals have been received for Greeley, 7 Bridges, and Roaring Brook construction projects. 7 Bridges is currently out to bid, and bid documents are being prepared for the high school. Preparation of Roaring Brook's bid documents, they're currently on hold. The board is reviewing the necessity of Roaring Brook construction in light of Roaring Brook's net decrease of 35 students after elementary redistricting. They're questioning whether to move forward with construction as originally planned, scale back the Roaring Brook project, or eliminate any future construction. And in regard to finances, legislation has recently passed in which it seems we will be receiving the 10% state building aid in addition to the standard 33% aid regularly given for building. Future presentation topics for Board of Ed meetings can be accessed through their website. Some of the upcoming meetings are very important. The November 13th meeting will be a presentation of middle school attendance zones. The November 27th meeting will be on redistricting and attendance zone, and after that meeting, the board will be voting. And the December 11th meeting will be a presentation on a review of the athletic programs. I encourage everyone to attend the meetings. They'll be informative. You'll be given an opportunity to share your comments and ask your questions. So please make every effort. If you can't attend, please email the board and you'll hear back.
Terrific. You did a great job, Kathleen. And these Board of Education meetings, as our board members know, they've been chock full of information these past couple of weeks, and it's a challenge to get it all in. And Kathy did a terrific job. And can I remember this? Is it board@chappaqua.k12.newyork.us? If you want to email comments to the Board of Education, and they welcome you to attend all the meetings. And please come. You really can learn a lot. Now Dr. Mitchell is going to give his principal's report.
Before I do that, staff, you're welcome to.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to talk briefly about our lockdown drill. How many people received a letter from me regarding that? You read the letter? Great. Okay. Some students weren't aware that a letter had been sent home. No? Didn't get a letter? See, one of those students. I sent it through the mail. Okay. Well, we sent a letter explaining the process and the rationale for the letter. I understand that Horace Greeley had a similar drill a few weeks ago. Frank Zampler, one of our assistant principals, attended that drill, took notes, and then developed a comprehensive plan that we shared with faculty. We reviewed on actually Tuesday, They were given the plan last week, and then we reviewed the plan yesterday as part of the staff development day. Today, I went on the PA at about 7:40 a.m. and announced that all teachers were to review the protocol that we had established for the lockdown drill. And they explained to students why we were having the drill, the process, and the schedule for it. Then at approximately 12:45, a few minutes into period 7, I got on the PA again. I described the scenario, I gave them an example, and the example I gave them had to do with bank robbery. I said, well, let's say that someone robbed a bank in town, and the police were pursuing the perpetrators onto school property. The police alerted the school, we went into a lockdown mode. I wanted them to see a realistic situation. Because one of the examples we had was a rabid animal. They had a good time with that one. We talked to the staff about not allowing the students to get too creative when they were going through the protocol. But the students are actually wonderful today, not just in how they responded to the drill, but in how they responded to the assessment of the drill. Because we explained that this was the first time that we were doing something like this, and we were going to learn together. So we began the drill. We had some horns signaling. Now, we made one error, and that is we didn't have enough horns. So not all of the classrooms heard the horn signal. But we did have a team of administrators and counselors, members of our emergency response team, moving throughout the building to see where we needed to lock down. And everyone had sets of notes, and actually all of the teachers had evaluation sheets that were then submitted at the end of the day to Frank Zamperlin. We had a voluntary faculty meeting at the end of the day, and many members of the staff attended and debriefed. There was also a debriefing session with students. So we learned that we need to, in addition to my verbal communication, that we are going into a lockdown drill, that we need to improve how we use a non-verbal signal, in this case the horn. And we learned that there are some classroom situations where students needed to move away from the windows or away from the doors. But for the most part, it seems as if we're 5 o'clock in the afternoon and no one was in the building. The place was quiet, students were quiet, it was very eerie. Staff had that sense, and I know Linda Bowl, our social workers here, she was on the emergency response team that moved about the building to assess the situation.
It was very eerie. They were wonderful, the kids. It was absolutely silent. You wouldn't have believed we had close to 1,000 kids in our center. They did a wonderful job.
But at the end of the day, students came up to me and said, well, one handed me a letter assessing the drill. He liked it for the most part, but he thought that instead of saying that we're going into a lockdown drill, that we should have a secret code that and I think his code has something to do with Mr. Jones' Mercedes keys, or it was, have been found in the main office. And it's a good idea, and we'll consider it. We did discuss having some type of code, like code red or code blue, but we did, again, the goal is not to frighten students. And again, they had a good sense of humor about it. I went into one classroom and talked to the students and debriefed with them, and they, of course, were giving me a hard time about this rabid animals scenario. And one student wanted to know about the security of the company that we hired to conduct the training and the assessment. I wanted to know if this company was also assessing network security, computer network security. So they were very thoughtful about this. But we said there were two principles. One is be out of sight, and the other is remain quiet. And they did. So we'll do this again. The next time we do this, though, we're not going to tell students. We will simply alert staff, and we will, so that in case students panic, staff will calm down some of those students who are particularly vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable. Let them know this is just a drill. We know about this. And we're not sure when we'll do that. That may have something to do with the responses. Any questions on that drill?
What if a child happens to be walking in the hall? How do they know where to go?
It's part of the plan. The plan is If you're out in the hall and you hear the signal or you hear the announcement, oh, you should have this. Teachers were saying that students were on time because they knew this was happening 7th period. They were running to get to class. Students who had never been on time. It's interesting. We told students that if you're in the bathroom and you hear a lockdown signal, you stay there. If you're in the hallway, you go to the closest classroom. And teachers were advised to welcome students into those classrooms. We're also assessing the entire building. For example, if some classrooms didn't lock, we have lists of that, and we'll send that to Building and Grounds. Other questions?
Did any of the kids with older siblings complain that they didn't have the 2-hour delay that they really had?
They didn't complain to me.
Oh, my daughter's convinced. And once her brother had a 2-hour delay, I assured her that it's going to happen here too.
Now, we held part of the meeting that they had that morning during a faculty meeting, and then some of it during yesterday's staff development meeting. And we also allowed really to be the guinea pig so we could watch their process and them. So we didn't have to have as much meeting time.
Where are you and the other administrators during the lockdown?
During the practice drill, we're in the hall. During the real one, we would probably be coordinating with the police and communicating.
How long were they required to be quiet for, and did you debrief them in the class that they were in? Was that right afterwards, or?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good question. It was about 10 minutes. The teachers, again, had a protocol not just to prepare the students for the lockdown drill, but to debrief. And one of the teachers suggested at Tuesday's faculty meeting that we have it at the end of 7th. And we said, no, we want to have the drill at the beginning of 7th so that you have time to debrief with the students. So that's when it occurred.
Just, I guess, the next time you'll have it, they would be in different classrooms, in a different place in the building. So, basically, I guess that the students are directed to listen to what the teacher says, because they're not, they won't be in the same place. So I guess my concern is that they know to listen to what the teacher says and go where, because I know it's a learning process for the students, but theoretically, as opposed to in the elementary school where the kids will probably be in the same place, these kids will probably not be in the same place where they are when these drills happen, whether it's the next one or if there really is an emergency.
Well, I think something that was a little unnerving for some of the students is that, first of all, there is no perfect plan.
Right. Well, that was my question. And also because I know my son was in gym at the time, so that's maybe not necessarily a person that he's most comfortable with, as opposed to one of the four teachers that he would feel happening. So that was why I asked.
I was down in the locker room. Mr. Southerton and Mr. Howell, not Mr. Howell, Mr. Kimbridge were down. They were down there making sure that the troops were back in the shower area and were quiet. So that was. But we talked to the students about how they have to be very creative. Let's just say there's a substitute in that classroom. The substitute doesn't know where this, and the students haven't rehearsed in this particular classroom. The students need to follow those very simple principles of trying to get out of sight and trying to and be quiet. And as someone said, it's a matter of buying time because the police have alerted us. And there's some type of commando team around here that would come into the area immediately. We're pretty close to where they're located. We had the building assessed 2 years ago with the police. We had it assessed last year again. We had it assessed this year again. We received a report from the security company just the other day. We're sharing that with faculty. So we've been studying the best ways to make the school secure, but we also understand that there isn't a perfect solution. And that's, I think, roughly speaking, when we have a fire drill, it's a simple objective. It's get out of the building quietly, get in your lines, we'll take attendance. And that's simple. They've done it. They're outside. But with this drill, there's this sense of the unknown. It's scary. So imagine when you were a child and you played, it's hard to think back to this, but when you played hide and seek, and you were hiding somewhere and you were waiting for someone to find you. It's just a game, but you were a little nervous anyway, even though it's just a game. Now they're nervous, and it's a scary world now. And they're playing hide and seek, and the adults are sanctioning this. It's scary. All right. Why don't we move on to the next topic? I understand that there have been some questions raised at this point about the 2002-03 overcrowding situation. I'm not prepared to make a presentation about our plans for housing students next year, or if we're building a schedule for students. It may not necessarily be housing students, maybe building some type of schedule. We don't know yet.